Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update video. This is Gianni DePoce, and it is great, as always, to be with you. This week, we are joined by special guest and the star of the show, Raymond Merriman.
Thank you, Johnny. Pleasure to be with you again. Looking forward to it.
Indeed, we have a lot to talk about today. We saw some pretty important moves across a variety of markets. So we're going to talk about what reversals we saw during the Venus-Saturn conjunction that unfolded this past week. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen here so we can look at some charts. Let's start off with the S&P 500, which began the week in a very bullish manner. But then one day after the Venus-Saturn conjunction, it formed a high and sold off pretty sharply. But by Friday, found a bid, found a floor, found some support, and was able to rally nicely to close up on the day. So Ray, what are your thoughts on some of the price action that we saw this past week, along with the Venus-Saturn conjunction?
Yes, I think it was quite notable that the Venus-Saturn correlated with the high of the rally we've had over the last 5 weeks or so, depending on which market you're looking at. March 29th was important not only in the United States equity market, but also European markets, Australian markets. And it's interesting to note that it came down into Friday. You see the low there on Friday, which is a midpoint of the Venus conjunct Saturn on Monday and the Mars conjunct Saturn coming up on Monday and Tuesday. So you got the high on the Venus conjunction Saturn. So far, you got the low on the midpoint of the Venus-Mars conjunction Saturn.
Indeed, and that was a really strong rally that we saw on Friday as well. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a chart of the Dow because we were down most of the day, and the rally really unfolded in the last hour or two of the day. So that was a nice, strong bid to finish the week. As you mentioned, we have the Mars-Saturn conjunction unfolding on April 4th. And then the following day, we also have Venus ingressing into the sign of Pisces. That's going to be on April 5th. And that's pretty significant as well, because Venus not only rules stock markets, but it's entering the sign of Pisces, which she is exalted in. And that's been a sign that has impacted a lot of markets right now, because we know that Jupiter and Neptune are in there. So it has a lot to do with crude oil and inflation. So any thoughts on those transits next week, Ray, or the Venus ingress into Pisces especially?
Yeah, I think that's very important, as you alluded to. So Venus is going to Pisces. Jupiter and Neptune are already in Pisces. These are all inflationary, normally positive and euphoric aspects. So we have a little fight going on right now with the Venus and Mars hitting Saturn, but that's going to end Monday and Tuesday, and it's just going to be purely Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, all in Pisces for the next week and really into the end of the month. So if we get speculative fever going on, which Jupiter, Neptune by itself can do, enhanced by Venus going into Pisces toward the end of the Venus and Pisces toward the end of the month conjuncting them, we could be sitting on a pretty wild market here. Starting next week and possibly going in right to the end of the month to that solar eclipse, which is also when Venus conjuncts Jupiter and Neptune.
Well, to add to that, let me pull up a chart of gold here, because I do want to revisit the Saturn, the Mars-Saturn conjunction on the 4th, because that's going to be making an important aspect to Pluto, to the Pluto of Vladimir Putin. Would you elaborate on that too, Ray?
Absolutely. So Mars conjunct Saturn, 22 of Aquarius, opposite Vladimir Putin's Pluto. And there was a report today, I haven't been able to verify it yet, that Ukraine actually launched a missile into Europe. Now, you and I had discussed before
into Russia,
the importance of, into Russia. You and I had discussed before the importance of Venus and Mars from March 29th to April 5th, moving to conjunction to Saturn as being a time of escalation of the war. We didn't really see this war ending or a peace agreement or a ceasefire lasting prior to that. And so it's interesting that as we go in the middle of this Mars-Saturn, Venus-Saturn aspect, there are reports of an escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, and we're hopeful. We're hopeful that once that passes, it's going to be more Jupiter, Neptune, and Venus, which are more peace-oriented and conciliatory aspects coming up into the end of the month. The only problem with this outlook possibly is as we get toward that eclipse, it's also going to be Pluto is going to be changing direction. So you get all these positive, peace-oriented aspects coming up in the month of April after next week, except the Pluto changing directions. I tend to think that Jupiter Neptune with Venus is going to be more dominant than the Pluto, though, going into the end of the month. But as you know, and we talk about a lot of times, anytime you have Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces involved, it's usually irrational exuberance, euphoria, but there are times it can be hysteria and panic. So we'll see how it manifests this time. I tend to be a little more optimistic, but you know, we want to withhold final judgment till we see actually how the tape unfolds.
Absolutely. And this is an excellent segue into the chart of gold that we have up on here, because it formed its low one day after the Venus Saturn conjunction. But you notice how it's kind of hanging out not far from its highs here. And we know that precious metals have a tendency to exhibit wide price moves during periods of heightened geopolitical turmoil. And that's where this, leg up, in the beginning and into the end of February and the beginning of March in gold, that was when kind of the whole situation really started to unravel. So let me pull up a chart of silver here as well, because I know you wanted to touch on that. But we also saw a low form here, and we were down again on Friday. We saw some leadership from gold. Ray, do you have any comments on gold's leadership or what we're seeing in silver right now?
Well, both made 5-week lows, March 29th, the same day the stock market made a high. What's interesting to me, as you just pointed out, is gold had a stronger rally off that low. Silver hasn't. That's a bit of a concern for the metals. Silver is going to have to catch up here, or gold is going to have to continue leading, in which case silver will catch up. Mm-hmm. But I'm a little concerned here that that they're not making new highs. Gold is close to its multi-week high, but silver was well off it last week. So we got some kind of a psychological divergence, if that, not actually some kind of a intermarket divergence developing here.
Indeed. And we also have to look at cryptocurrencies, because we saw some pretty constructive price action, made their highs of the year. Both Bitcoin and Ethereum rallied to a new high for 2022 this past week, but we did see highs form right on the Venus-Saturn conjunction in the case of Bitcoin this past week. But in Ethereum, the high happened one day later. We sold off a couple days worth of corrective price action, but then on Friday saw a nice floor. And as you mentioned earlier, Ray, we are right in the midpoints of the Venus-Saturn, Mars-Saturn conjunctions. So right. What are your thoughts on what's going on in Bitcoin? And once you're done with that, I'll pull up a chart of Ethereum as well.
Well, as you look at both Bitcoin and Ethereum, you have a similar situations with gold and silver, in the sense that Ethereum rallied very strongly at the end of the week. In fact, it got back to the high of the year. The high of this year was very close to it on Friday in Ethereum, but Bitcoin was a laggard. So we want to also watch here, as we're going to watch in gold and silver, for some kind of divergences next week as we go into that Mars Saturn. But I'm still positive on the cryptocurrency markets, because again, we're going toward Jupiter Neptune, which could be speculative fever. And I think one avenue of expressing that speculative fever, if in fact it works out that way, will be the crypto market. So I think it'd be very interesting to watch this month, and especially in the next week.
Indeed. And as I pull up a chart of Ethereum here, just want to remind our viewers that the best way to find out our insights and what we're doing in this space is to look at the MMA cryptocurrency reports. We have both weekly and daily updates available for you. But yeah, as Ray mentioned, Ethereum is leading the way here. It's less than $1 off of making a new high for 2022. So looking pretty good. And, bigger picture, you mentioned the speculative fever with Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces, but now with Venus entering the foray, Venus is a ruler of currencies, and cryptocurrencies are a variation of a currency, so to speak. We could see that increased even more, and then we also have to address the fact that Uranus is still in Taurus, which has been a major boon for cryptocurrencies in terms of revolutionizing the way we view money and transacting commercially. So I know you wanted to look at crude oil as well. This has been a big commodity in the headlines as of late, always is when geopolitical turmoil is high. We are fast approaching the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. That's going to be on April 12th, and that's going to be in Pisces as well. So, we really have all of this, energy related to crude oil unfolding. And, we have also a culmination of the situation where, Russia, and I think this might have to do with Venus going into Pisces too, Ray, because, Russia asked Europe to now pay for their natural gas contracts in rubles, right? So there's a modification going on with respect to currency. But, Europe is coming out of winter. So how much, more natural gas or, heating oil do they need in the immediate term? Can they, hold off on this agreement? But then you mentioned, with the whole Mars-Saturn conjunction opposite Putin's Pluto, we're really seeing this come to a head. And as you said, we're optimistic that this resolves in a good way. So any thoughts or commentary on what's going on in crude oil or the aspects impacting this market right now?
I think it's noteworthy that as we move toward this Venus in Pisces, joining Jupiter, Neptune in Pisces, that President Biden has issued a directive to release 1 million barrels of crude oil a day for the next 6 months, 180 million barrels in total. And as you can see in last week's price action, that dropped the price because, of course, he's flooding the market with oil. And people on the short term think, well, yeah, you're going to meet the supply now, and that's going to drive down prices. But long term, that's not going to drive down prices. It's actually going to cause prices to rally because at some point, he or the administration has to buy that oil back.
Right.
So this is a short-term bearish indicator for the market. Maybe it coincides with Jupiter conjunct Neptune indicating oversupply or a lot of supply. But longer term, this is actually bullish, I think, for the future of crude oil.
Indeed, those are all very salient points. So let me go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Ray, we have a question from a viewer as it pertains to our field and our discipline. So the question is, what is financial astrology and how does it work?
Well, to answer that, let's first of all consider that astrology is the measurement of human activity. Okay, it represents cycles in human activity correlating to cycles in the cosmos. Okay, cycles in human activity correlating to cycles in the cosmos. And one way to measure the cycles in human activity is through financial markets. Every day, prices change. You get highs every day, every week, every month, every year. And when those markets make highs, it suggests that there is a peak or a culmination of collective psychology, of the collective mood, of investor sentiment, if you will. And so astrology measures that very well, probably better than any other study I've looked at. Because when you go back and look in time and look at these highs and lows, weekly highs, monthly lows, you'll see that there are planetary aspects or planetary stations where planets change from retrograde and direct that are happening nearby. In fact, if there's several of them happening in a short span of time, it's what we call a critical reversal date. And so financial astrology is the study of measuring the correlation of planetary movements, especially aspects and stations, to highs and lows in financial markets. And by that, we're able to assist traders and even investors in making decisions, because if you're a trader, then the faster moving planets making these aspects show the shorter term market fluctuations. The outer planets making aspects are going to be the longer term market cycles. So that's what financial astrology is, a study of planetary cycles correlated to changes in price activity of financial markets.
Indeed, and to take that just a small step further, you know, there's that saying, "As above, so below," right? And
That's
so,
right.
you know, I've always viewed financial astrology as a cosmic story in what's going on in human activity, as you mentioned, but also in the economy. You see so many of these themes unfolding above, manifesting below in the types of sectors and industries that are either experiencing periods of tremendous growth or periods of tremendous contraction. So, you know, there are various tricks and tools that we use to make those type of determinations, and, you know, analyze and give them to our readers in a form that is, you know, actionable for them. So yeah, it is a fascinating, never-ending study, and something that we both very much enjoy. So Ray, that's all the time we had for today. I do have a couple announcements. We are going to have our monthly MMA Cycles Report published on April 11th and 12th. So that's going to be a perfect anniversary, so to speak, for the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. So that's not an issue you're going to want to miss. So would highly recommend you either take out a month or take a 1-year subscription to that. And then we are going to have our second part of the MMA market update via webinar, and that's going to be on May 8th. So that is also available for purchase at www.mmacycles.com. Ray, were there any other announcements or anything else you wanted to share with our viewers today?
Only that the May 8th webinar is going to be a little more shorter term oriented than we did in the February webinar. So if you're a trader looking out for the next, say, 3 weeks to 6 months, this will be an excellent opportunity for you to get our views on the outlook.
Very good. All right, Ray. Well, it was a pleasure having you on, and we're going to see you back next month right after the new moon. So stay tuned, everyone, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you, Johnny.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.